Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We've got a ton to go over today, a lot to catch up on. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Joining me is Keith Smith. Find him at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, here we are back in the saddle and ready to break down a lot today.
Yeah, this is what happens when we have to take a couple days off because we were both a little under the weather.
Yep.
So we took a little bit of time off. We're playing a little hurt for you today, but we're gonna power through and give you a show. We're get a whole bunch of stuff to catch up on. So we're gonna split it up east and west, just to kind of keep it organized. And Trevor and I were talking a little inside baseball here. We didn't want one show just to become all right. We're just gonna list everyone who's out in the health and safety protocols for the next 10
It's a
minutes
long
because
list.
quite frankly that becomes a bit of a downer. So we're going to split it up: Eastern Conference, Western Conference, a big news catch up update with some of our own thoughts obviously mixed in on that, and let's go.
Yeah, and what better way to start it off than with the team that a lot of people have been buzzing about in the East, the Indiana Pacers, who a couple of days ago apparently made the decision that they are okay with a rebuild and kind of tearing things down. Myles Turner had some comments about how he doesn't like being seen as just a role player, believes that's what the Pacers see him as. That got me thinking, though, Keith, what does he think his new team is going to see him as? Like, is
Yeah.
there a team out there that's trading for him thinking, okay, this is now the centerpiece of our team? I feel like Turner's comments, as much as they might say he's got one foot out the door in Indiana, they could also scare away potential suitors if it looks like he wants a role that's maybe, frankly, a little bit bigger than what he's suited for.
Yeah, I mean, this is year 7 for him. So if he was going to be this, and I'm putting words in his mouth a little bit
Sure.
here, but if he sees himself as a Joel Embiid type or a Nikola Jokic type, where it's, hey, run the offense for me, get me a whole bunch of stuff, I'm gonna dominate, because it's definitely the offensive end. He was pretty clear about that. It's the offensive end where he wants to be more involved. You would have shown it already by now if you were that guy, and the team would have, I would hope, have built a roster around you. That said, I'm not the biggest Myles Turner guy in the world, but I am not an idiot about it either. I think he is a good player. If he is your fourth or fifth best guy, you probably have a really, really good team. If he's your first or second best player, you're probably like a little bit like the Pacers, where it's you're good but not great. So I think that is the challenge for Indiana is, where do you go with this now?
Mm-hmm.
If you're another team, you're having to probably bring him in and sell him on, hey, you're coming in here to supplement what we already have, to be a big part of that. Now, that's a heck of a lot easier to do if it's, hey, we think you can lift us in the title contention, versus, hey, come here and still be, around 500 at best and
Mm-hmm.
battling for playoff spots. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure anybody's going to trade for him with the idea of, all right, we're bringing you in and here's 20 shots a night or anything like that. I just don't see it.
So if that's how he sees himself, which is kind of, and again, we don't want to put
Yeah,
words in his mouth, but that's
sure.
what these comments kind of suggest, that he sees himself as more than just a role player. If you're a team trading for him, that is a little bit of a red flag to me. And but like you said, though, if it's let's say the Warriors package together some assets and they go get him, that's an easier sell than if a kind of middle of the pack team makes a trade for him
For
and
sure.
and says, and expects him to be the piece that lifts them to another level or something like that. So will be
Yeah, if
interesting to
you were a
see.
team like Orlando,
Oh,
I'm just
sure.
making it up
Yes.
because I don't think they'd be involved here at all. They're not at that level of the rebuild. But let's say they wanted to get involved to trade for him. Yeah, they're not doing it with the idea of, yeah, we've just been waiting for somebody to unlock Myles Turner and make him, the a top 3 center in the NBA. I just can't see that. I just can't get there with any team seeing him that way. And with what you said is, yeah, if that's where his mindset is, you have to have some form of reality check if you're both the Pacers and any kind of acquiring team of, hey, that's just not where we're going.
Now, just to wrap this up, to flip it, if you're the Pacers, do these comments then, if we've heard the Pacers are going to trade at least one of Myles Turner and Domantas Sabonis. Does this then push you more towards, okay, fine, Sabonis, you're staying, Turner, you're the guy that's gonna get traded then because of these comments?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think it was more of him being candid and
Sure.
honest than it was any shots at the organization. Because normally, when you get those shots at the organization, you start to get some comments along the lines of, they haven't used me properly, I haven't been developed, I haven't been, X, Y, and Z. I think it was more just of, yeah, we have all these other guys, like, and I think I can play a bigger role. So I think that's probably more of the thought process here with Turner. And if you're the Pacers, I don't think that changes your mind. Personally, I would prioritize keeping Sabonis over Turner. I just think he's a better player.
Yes.
And
More
I think
valuable
he's
though.
proven that. Yeah, I mean, he's an all-star. He's two-time all-star. So I
Mhm.
think that is, a thing where that just, some will say it's easier to make the all-star team as a big than it is any other position and all that. And I don't know that that's necessarily true, because he's the guy who's getting in as like a wild card pick, not
Right.
a selected pick like that. So yeah, I think it's, in the end, we'll see. I don't think this changes really anything from the Pacers decision making process.
All right, I agree, and we'll see what winds up happening here with the Pacers. Does sound like they are primed to make a move. They're one of several teams now, as we're inching closer to that December 15th date when much of the free agents who were signed this last offseason become tradable, which means NBA trade season is, well, I mean, just about here now. Bradley
Yeah, a
Beal,
few days away.
yeah, just a few more days and we're there. Bradley Beal, the Washington Wizards, had some comments recently that sounded a little bit less certain about staying in
Sure.
Washington, a little bit more, I don't want to say selfish, but more interested in, his own future than what we've seen. He's very typically been a I'm a team first guy, that sort of mentality. And now we've got him here saying that he's open to doing what's best for himself. That said, I still get the sense that what he really wants, option 1, 2, and 3, maybe 4 for him is stay with the Wizards. But he wants to make sure that he uses this opportunity, this leverage that he's got to push the Wizards to continue to do whatever it takes to build a winning team around him.
Yeah, and in this was a really good get by Chris Haynes at Yahoo Sports. Chris has done a wonderful job getting these star guys to kind of open up to him and be very candid and have these discussions with him. So this was, I highly recommend you go listen to the entire podcast. So there's a bunch of articles out there that kind of summarize it too, all over the place. But yeah, Beal was. I hate to keep using the term candid, but that's what he was. He was candid. He was open about, hey, at some point I got to be selfish and do what's best for me instead of what's always best for the team. He was also extremely complimentary of them going out and getting the package they did for Russell Westbrook. And he was like, when I saw that, I was like, man, it's tough to trade Russ, but we're getting a bunch of guys who can play and help us. And they have, I mean, 3 key rotation players for them as they've gotten off to, they're starting to slide a little bit
Yeah.
now. What are they? They are 15 and 11. They're 4 and 6 in their last 10. So they've slid a little bit in the East, but they're still, I think, better than most people expected. So yeah, I think it's just Beal being honest about, hey, I have to keep everything on the table here. I can't just go in with the mindset of I'm here forever and I'm never going to play anywhere else. And I think that's the right approach to take if you're him, because as you said, this is kind of LeBron kind of pioneered this a little bit of, let's just keep putting pressure on the organization by
Yep.
never fully committing, forever. And that's not a criticism at all. I think that's your superstar right, is, put pressure on. And if they don't get it right, you can always ask for a trade.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I don't think, I think Beal's made it very clear how he feels about Washington.
Sure.
He's just wanting to make,
As has his wife,
yes. Yeah. I mean, so
which is important.
he just wants to make it very, he wants to make sure that he takes every shot that he's got to build a winner.
Yep.
And that's perfectly understandable. So I don't have a problem with him putting pressure on the organization at this point, because he's also made it clear that he's shown the love to the Wizards, shown the love to Wizards fans. Now he's just trying to do, number one, what's best for himself, but also what might be best for the organization, kind of have that fire lit under them the entire time. So I don't think there's an issue here. And like I said, I don't think he's going to leave the Wizards. We'll see what they do here as the trade deadline comes up. Are there some moves they can make to kind of push themselves to the next level? We'll see. But I don't have a problem with what Beal is doing here. I don't think this is a bad thing for the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. No, completely agree. And I think Washington nothing changes for them. They can still pay him far more than anybody else can. They can lock him up for that 5th year. He's starting to get to the point in his career where those years do matter a little bit more than they would for, one of these guys who's signing a new, younger player signing a new contract. So it's, I wouldn't by any means did I read and listen to these comments and say, that's it, he's out. He's let's get to the trade
Right.
machine and start, dreaming
No.
up deals. I wasn't there at all. I just think this is, for Bradley Beal, this is just, again, being completely honest, while also, hey, Washington, a little pressure on you. Let's make sure we get this right.
All right. Seems like your guy Danny Ainge is getting a little antsy, sitting at home and not and not working right now. He's open to an advisory position somewhere. I know there's been a lot of buzz about him maybe taking over in Portland, and I guess we'll see where that leads. But sounds like it's more like he wants to be an advisor somewhere rather than kind of take over as a general manager again someplace. But interesting that Danny Ainge is already kind of itching to get back to it.
Yeah, it's absolutely no surprise. I mean, this guy is legendarily competitive.
Mhm.
Even the story since he's been retired for years of him on the golf course, going at people and all those kind of things. So that doesn't shock me at all that he is, kind of, I want to get back in. I want to be involved again. And it also doesn't surprise me that he's saying, I don't necessarily want to run the whole show.
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly, he's old. It's, it's, I don't want to be insulting, but he's old. He's had 2 heart attacks now. His family had been pushing him for years to, step back and, let someone else shake the reins in Boston. And then, I think this is one where what he would like to be is like what Jerry West is now for the Clippers
Yeah.
of, I'm not running things, but nothing really happens without me having some say in it too. So I think that's where he would ideally like to be. And my guess is that's going to be in Utah because that's where he's living now. He's
Yeah.
moved away from the Boston area. So my guess is that'll be, where that happens. But maybe it's Portland, inexperienced interim general manager. Maybe he says, hey, I'm happy to lend a hand for a franchise I played for. And he's a native of the Portland area.
Yeah, certainly wouldn't hurt for Portland to add in kind of the steadying hand that Danny Ainge can bring. Ben Simmons, not siren worthy or anything like that.
Don't have it queued up.
But we did get the news that that he's open to a trade to the Spurs, which we had heard that, okay, he wants to be in California, he wants to be with one of the West Coast teams and that sort of thing. Now open to potentially going to San Antonio. And I think the interesting thing here is that the Spurs, as you've mentioned many times here, Keith, they're not the team to make midseason trades, but they do if they decide, we're going to break our quasi rule, whatever we want to call it, our preference to not do midseason trades. They actually have some young pieces that they could put together to potentially interest the 76ers. I don't know if it's enough for what compared to what the 76ers want. But then again, frankly, probably nobody has enough if we're basing it on what the 76ers want. But interesting. I don't know that that's where he ultimately winds up, but perhaps another landing spot to consider.
Yeah, and you mentioned the young pieces because a big part of a Simmons trade, as we've repeatedly said, is the salary matching. You have to be able to get up to the money that Simmons makes, which is, let's make sure we get the exact figure right here. I think it's just over 33 million. So I it's funny, I threw out somewhere I said 30 million. I think it was on one of our shows. Somebody's like, stop saying that. It's 33 and then it's 35. And I'm like, all right, fine. So let's be correct. 33 plus million, just a little bit over. So you got to get there. Now, San Antonio can get there relatively easily because they've got Thaddeus Young. He's already half of it at 14 million. And then presumably at least one of DeJounte Murray or Derek White would have to go in that deal. Now, I think there was a point in time where DeJounte Murray as kind of the headline piece might have been something San Antonio may have considered. I'm not so sure now. Do you have any idea what his numbers look like on this season?
Yeah, they're good. They're really good.
Let me read them to you because I don't know.
I know they're amazing, but
I knew they were good. They're better than I thought. 18.9 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, 8.5 assists, and 1.9 steals. And he's doing it on pretty decent percentages, 45% from the floor, 35% from 3, and he's up to 70% from the free throw line. Doesn't get to the line an awful lot, but one of the best rebounding guards in the game at
Mm-hmm.
this point. 8.4 rebounds per game is impressive. He's also an extremely good defender. So yeah, that's why I don't know that they're going to be jumping at the idea of, hey, let's ship him out along with other stuff for Simmons. That'd be a great get for Philly if they could, because Murray's also, this is his age 25 season too. So young guy who's still got room to grow. And sometimes one of the things that does come along later for guards can be the jump shot. We've seen that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it develops a little bit later into the career, and he's starting to show signs of that. So now, from the Spurs perspective, you've got him locked up, fully guaranteed for the next 3 years at 15.4, 16.6, and 17.7. That's not, I'd be, yeah, no, I wouldn't, he would not be part of a trade package for me if I was the Spurs. There's other ways to get there for sure
Mm-hmm.
if they wanted to go that direction, but that's one that maybe let's see where the Spurs are at the end of the season. If Simmons still isn't traded, let's see where it is, and let's have a chat around the draft or beginning of the offseason.
If you're the 76ers, would you be willing to do a deal with the Spurs if they say no DeJounte Murray? Like, can you walk away from that trade and not get DeJounte Murray?
It depends on what else is on the table,
Right.
right? Obviously,
Like
if you
first and
think
things like that.
still, yeah, if there's other picks or I can turn around, I like if there's still a belief of we can turn around and trade Simmons as part of a package for Damian Lillard or something like that. Maybe we're going to get into that when we get into the west side of things. But yeah, I would have a hard time if I was Philly. So I would want to hold firm there and say I want Murray.
Absolutely. And then again, from the Spurs side, I think you're right. I think if you're the Spurs, obviously defensively, Ben Simmons is all world, one of the best defensive
Sure.
players in the NBA. So Murray and him are on a different level there. But just in terms of production wise, you talk about those numbers, and the first thought in my head is, isn't that kind of what you would hope to get out of
Ben
Ben Simmons?
Simmons.
Right? Like those.
But at least he shoots the ball.
Yes, but
That's
he
the
and
difference.
he shoots the ball. So,
Yeah,
and obviously a big difference on defense and the size and all that kind of stuff. I'm
sure.
not saying they're the same player, but
No.
just that sounds very much like what you would hope to see out
Yeah.
of Ben Simmons in terms of
Yeah. If
production.
you can
So,
get 16, 8, and 8, yeah, you're feeling pretty good.
yeah,
But I
absolutely.
also look at it as if I'm the Spurs, I'm getting 16, 8, and 8 from a guy who will shoot for half the money. Yeah, I'm probably good.
Right.
I'll stick with what I got.
Moving on to Cleveland, the surprising Cleveland Cavaliers, who have been a lot better this season than
Yeah.
what we would have anticipated, may have turned the mentality, right? This is a team where heading into the season, we would have said, okay, trade deadline starts inching up. This team is going to be a seller, right? They're going to be a team that's going to look to part with pieces. Maybe you move on from Ricky Rubio if you can find a contending team that needs veteran help, things of that nature. Well, now they've been a lot better than expected, and they may have shifted into being buyers instead.
Yeah.
And one of the guys they're interested in, just like everybody around the NBA buzzing about the Pacers sale going on, Karis LeVert wouldn't be a bad guy to target to replace what you were getting from Colin Sexton, especially if the Cavs think, you know what, this is it. We really are a good team, and we're going to be a playoff squad this season.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting as you look at this is their one kind of weak spot now in their opening group is Isaac Okoro. He just hasn't come along as an offensive player the way you would have hoped. Darius Garland, he's been great. He
Good.
has been
Yep.
really, really good. The goofy three big grouping works because Markkanen is spending most of his time on the perimeter on offense, and Mobley can defend everybody. He's just unreal on defense, so that's why that is working. So it's kind of become that two guard spot. If anything, they really need offensive creation because it's Darius Garland and Ricky Rubio and nobody else.
Yeah.
It's no one else can create anything for themselves or their teammates, and that's what LeVert can do. Is he a perfect player? No, he's pretty inefficient at times with the way he shoots it. He tends to go through these turnover binges. We're throwing it all over the place. But here's the other thing: if you're the Cavs, if you've decided, yeah, we're not going to re-sign Colin Sexton, just the money's going to be too much or whatever
Yep.
the reason being, you could put Sexton and a guy like Jetty Osman together with a pick and go get Karis LeVert, I would imagine. Because if I'm the Pacers, then I'm looking at it as, all right, now we can re-sign Sexton probably to a more team-friendly deal because he's coming off the injury than what it might have been otherwise. Osman, yeah, he's okay, I guess.
Mhm.
And then we get a pick and we start to this rebuild, retool, reset process, whatever they're gonna call it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, let's say both players were healthy. Who would you rather have, Colin Sexton or Karis LeVert?
Colin Sexton.
Agreed.
I
So
would.
if you're the Pacers, you're selling yourself on that, right? If we're going to start
Yep.
rebuilding, then this season doesn't matter that much to us anyway. So if we lose the production of Karis LeVert, okay, that's just going to increase our draft pick this coming off season, or increase our lottery odds anyway. And
Yep.
then in the long run, which is what you care about more now, if you're in a rebuild, you get arguably the better player. I like that deal a lot for both sides. I like that for the Pacers, and I like that too to give a boost to the Cavs. You know, you look at the Cavs; they're 5-5 in their last 10. The teams ahead of them, though, the Heat and the Wizards, are both 4-6. There may be some opportunities for them to move up, but they've also got some good teams behind them. The 76ers, the Hawks. You
Yep.
have to imagine these teams are going to continue to improve. Your Celtics are going to get Jaylen Brown back. When that starts to happen, the Cavs have got to make sure that they're keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. So landing a guy like LeVert, even if it means sacrificing, arguably, again, the better player in Colin Sexton, might make sense for a Cavs team that could really jump up in terms of the perception of them around the NBA if they solidify themselves as a playoff team. So I like that deal a lot, Keith, for both sides.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things too. You have to factor in it means a lot to Cleveland to be in the postseason. They haven't been in there in a long time, and ideally, you'd want to beat six and be in the actual playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But even to get to the play in, I think this is also a deal that it's not bad long term because then you have Levert next year too because he is under contract. You can really kind of then or what are we looking like? Do we still like the three big grouping?
Mm-hmm.
How does this work with Levert here? Can we upgrade and maybe move him into like a super six-man role where he just can kind of do his thing on second units and cook off the bench for us? What does that look like? And that's where I think it becomes a whole package too. Of you're also getting rid of Osmond's money, which
Yep.
is not it's not terrible because it's so low. It's less than 10 million, but it's not great. So I think this is just one where if you want to move on now, if you're sold, hey, we're going to resign Colin Sexton and we're going to be the ones who get him on a more team friendly deal, then you don't do this and you
Sure.
just ride it out and maybe a smaller acquisition comes along that helps you or something like that. But yeah, it is interesting. That one kind of popped in my head. I think when we initially started talking about these Pacers rumors a couple days ago, and it just continues to make a lot of sense.
And it ties in too to the rumors that we were hearing. I don't even remember how long ago it was, but that before the injury, that the Cavs might be ready to move on from Colin
Yeah.
Sexton to begin with. So works out there. And again, I think the Cavs are in a really interesting position in the East because they are in a prime spot to move up, but they're also in a position where they could slide back a lot. They're only a game up on your Celtics for the 10 seed right now, and they're in the 6th spot right now. So there's a jumble in the middle of the East,
Hmm.
and they've got to have some incentive to make a push here and do something to kind of put them over the top.
Yeah, it kind of feels like 11 teams for 10 spots
Yep,
in the East
it really
right
does.
now with the Knicks there because I just the Raptors and Pacers they were only a little bit out of that 10th playing spot. I just don't see that, especially the Pacers were already hearing right. They're gonna start moving players, and the Raptors they kind of think sent a message at the end of that Oklahoma City game that they lost the other night when it was you're in the super tight game against a bad team that you should beat, and you're playing a bunch of your bench guys at the end.
Right.
But I know part of it was the bench guys were playing okay, but that to me says, I don't know that Toronto's priority is necessarily on, hey, let's really push, which I don't know that it should be for them to push to be just in the plan. I think it's, hey, if we can get another high pick, put it with Scotty Barnes and some of our guys, we're all of a sudden in pretty good shape here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Moving on. The Chicago Bulls. Hardship
Ooh.
exceptions
Yeah.
here. Man, they've been decimated with health and safety protocols, but they've added Stanley Johnson and Alfonso McKinney to wing players to help kind of round out their roster. Also, two more, okay, technically, former Lakers. Stanley Johnson claimed off the South Bay Lakers in the G League. Interesting that that's what the route they've gone. I'm going to start calling them Lakers East now that they've got those two guys plus Caruso plus Lonzo Ball. But they've had a great season, And unfortunately, they are being decimated right now with health and safety protocols. So it makes sense that they would go land a couple players like this that they can just kind of plug and play wings that can help get them by.
At this point, you could probably include DeMar DeRozan in there. I mean, he's been rumored to play for the Lakers so many times, so
He's
probably throw him in
tried
there. But
to.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
tried to. It's just never worked out.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, tough for the Bulls, right? They
Mm-hmm.
they are they're just going through it right now with COVID, and then the actual injuries to Caruso, Patrick Williams, uh poor Kobe White gets back. He's only back for like a week, and then he's off into the COVID protocol. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit touch and go for them right now. They're really going to be working through. It's going to be a lot of Levine and Vooch. They need Lonzo to step up, and then this is where that bench depth is tested. Now, I've been critical of their depth in the past. Anybody would be in rough shape with this many guys out, 5 players in the health and safety plus 2 injuries. Yeah, you're going to be in rough shape there. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm very curious to see where what this team looks like in a couple weeks before these guys are all back.
Yeah, it's something where the Bulls, again, when they're healthy, this team is fantastic.
Yeah, they're
But
just as good as the Bucks and the Nets, I think.
absolutely, and
At this point.
which has been amazing. It's been
Yeah.
amazing how good they've been this season. Not certainly not what we would have projected for them, but they got to get healthy here. And yeah, it's been certainly a disappointment. And we're seeing this around the league where we've got the more and more cases that are falling into health and safety protocols. Speaking of which, we're finishing out the show here with Rick Carlisle. The Indiana Pacers even having to cancel practice. Masai Ujiri. As
Raptors
well,
also canceled practice
right?
yesterday. Good news out of Toronto reports are no positive tests amongst the
Great.
players. So that's good.
That is indeed good news. But this is something that is starting to rear its ugly head again as a bigger and bigger issue. We're not at the point where we've lost any games or had to postpone any games like we saw last season, but it feels like that may be kind of the direction things are heading at this point.
Hey, let's talk about the Bulls for a second, just because I
Yeah,
wanted to pull up what their schedule looks like. So they play the Heat on Saturday, and then it's pretty light. Detroit, Toronto. I promise I'm not taking a shot, but the Lakers aren't what we thought they would be. Then
yeah,
Houston, Toronto again, in Indiana. That gets you like just past Christmas, and by that point, these guys should hopefully be back. That's 16 more days. So even if it's the full 10-day absence and then a handful of days on the back end for reconditioning, that should get you back to these guys back. So that's fairly favorable, I would say, especially this year where it's just hard to cherry pick wins off anybody's schedule just because there's so few truly terrible teams.
right.
I think getting Toronto twice in there, Detroit, Houston, they do get the Lakers at home, and it's an afternoon game on a Sunday, so that's always a questionable thing for a West Coast team
Yep.
going east-ish. Chicago's not exactly east, but yeah. So Miami, that's clearly the toughest one. It's also very home heavy. Only the Miami game and one of the Toronto games are on the road in that period. So hey, hang in there. If they can get through that, looking pretty good, they're going to be tough the rest of the way in the East.
Yep. They just have to weather the storm right now. Anything that you want to say about the health and safety stuff before we wrap it up and get ready for the Western Conference portion of the show?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is a very, very popular question that I'm getting asked by a lot of people is there any news? Do we have any thought that the NBA may shut down? The answer is no. They're not going to. One is this is not like it was 2 years ago, obviously. It's also not even what it was last year because so much of the league is vaccinated. Even the vast majority of the players who are testing positive are still asymptomatic and are feeling pretty good through this. So there's no sense that the league is going to shut down. They could do something where a team maybe has a game or two postponed and
Yep.
then those get tacked on later in the schedule, but they're trying not to do that because you don't want to force. Almost always when you do that, some poor team ends up with some crappy travel situation,
Yeah.
or it
And
ends
like
up in
3 games in 3 nights or something.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, back to back to back games or something. So they really don't want to do that to teams. So and they're encouraging teams. We amended the CBA to allow for hardships when you have multiple players out due to COVID absences, as we just talked about with the Bulls. Bulls are up to 19 total players on the roster now because they went and signed a couple guys. So they're going to encourage teams utilize the tools that are available to you. Try to get through this and see where we go. But no sense that there's going to be any form of shutdown.
All right. So I think that's great news for basketball fans that the NBA is not going to be looking at shutting down anytime soon. Not a surprise, but again, that's reassuring to hear that. Hopefully we don't see any teams have to postpone games, but I do think that kind of wraps things up for the Eastern Conference segment. If you're watching us over on YouTube, make sure that you check back later today. We'll be posting the Western Conference. A lot of stuff going on in the West. You've got CJ McCollum, unfortunate situation there. Christian Wood, potentially on the trade block. What could the Rockets get for him? A lot of things for us to talk about. Even some Golden State Warriors trade news, and we'll also talk a little bit about the Lakers and the position they're in as well. So that's coming up later on today. Be on the lookout for that video. Till then, everybody, see ya and stay safe.